It is Ryan Seacrest here. Everybody needs some variety in life. That's what I love about Chumba Casino. They know how to keep things fresh and exciting. All their games are free to play, like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire. You can claim free daily login bonuses, too. And they release new games every week. So spice things up with ChumbaCasino.com now for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to the Paranorm Girl podcast. I am your host, Kristen. Florence Kingsland wrote in 1904, "The realm of spirits was always thought to be nearer to that of mortals on Christmas than any other time." Once upon a not-too-distant past, a popular tradition caught hold in Victorian England. The tradition of cozying up around a blazing fire, surrounded by family and friends on Christmas Eve, to share ghost stories. This tradition did not catch on in America quite like it did in England. 'Tis a shame. When the nights are this long, start so early, get this cold, and are so hushed when the snow falls outside the window. The setting has truly never been better. It's a tradition I intend to resurrect this year, and I urge you to join me. Now, if you would like to take part in giving the gift of fright and spreading some holiday fear, but alas, you have no stories of ghosts or monsters to share, then listen up. Today's guest may have a solution for you. His stories of the haunted, the demonic, and the dark have been stirring the imaginations and sending shivers up the spines of his audience since the pandemic. The tales he tells are sincerely frightening. But perhaps what makes them even more so, what keeps his listeners so enwrapped, what keeps them up at night, is the perfect scary story timbre and personal experiences with things that go bump in the dark. My guest is the creator and voice behind Mystery Archives. On this program, he covers terrifying stories of the supernatural. Many are real-life encounters. Many are previously untold. And many defy explanation to this day. For the sake of resurrecting tradition this Christmas Eve, be sure you make your way over to YouTube following today's show and subscribing to his channel. He is also the author of Stories from the Archives, Volumes 1, 2, and soon-to-be 3. In these books, he has included some of his scariest, most unsettling episodes and retold them for the reading audience. Please enjoy my conversation with Kody Richardson.
Ooh, that's an intense question. I'm just an average dude who got really lucky and put in a lot of work building a series on YouTube, and I get to do it now for a living. Thankfully, so far, knock on wood. But yeah, it's enabled me to have some really cool adventures and to dive into some really creepy cases. And other than that, I'm just a normal guy. I have a fiance, have a puppy who may or may not show up in the background. I play a little bit of video games. I work a ton on the series itself, and yeah, written a couple books now, which I'm thrilled to have out to the world. And other than that, I'm kind of boring. So
Well, I don't know. I am a susser out of clues to, the origin story of folks, and I have to imagine, like, you've become the host of Mystery Archives. It's
Mhm.
incredibly popular. It's got nearly 300,000 subscribers now. You have written the series of books, very, very
Mhm.
scary books. Like, a person who is this in depth with the paranormal, with the haunted, that's not born in a vacuum. And I was just curious what was that instigating moment, that event that started the fascination that introduced you to this world?
That's fair. I didn't want to make it too long winded from the jump, I guess, because I'm thinking more or less in the modern day. But I do still get up to some pretty spooky adventures. But I had some paranormal experiences as a kid that kind of led me down this road of just my overall fascination with the paranormal. And I've always kind of just had, even from like an entertainment standpoint, I've always enjoyed like darker shows, like unsolved mysteries and a haunting and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, I had several different experiences, which I'm sure we'll dive into a little bit here, that just altered my perspective on things. And I grew up in a really rough and dysfunctional household, which I think was a little bit of a catalyst for some of that phenomenon. And just ever since those catalyzing years, I guess how you could put it, is just led me down this path. And it's kind of a long story. I know I'm not coming across super like clear. It's a little vague right now. Um, it's just there's a lot to divulge with that.
Mhm.
Like I came up with the idea for Mystery Archives in 2017, right? And didn't really do anything with it until 2020 when I had gotten laid off from my job. And I was like, I've grown up, I've had these experiences, I've always migrated towards these types of shows. I enjoy and I consume this type of entertainment, right? I was like, why don't I just try and take my fascination for things like the paranormal and the occult
Mhm.
and just try and do something like that in a documentary style in my own way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
ever since then, and now granted, I ended up going back to work and everything else until 2022 when I was lucky enough to leave to do this full time. But it was a lot of work getting there as far as building up. Cause I mean, I would work like 10, 12-hour shifts and then come home and like work on a story or edit for like another 2 to 3 hours at least per night. So it's like some pretty long days,
Dude,
you can
yeah.
imagine.
Mhm. Yeah, that's something I
Yeah.
don't think a lot of it, like, dawns on a lot of folks, is
Mhm.
just how much time, goes into just one single episode, a 30-minute episode. It's a lot of time to not just
Dude, it's
edit
a
and
lot.
record, but to research. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot. Kudos, man.
Well,
Doing it with
thank you.
with a job too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Well,
no, not so much these days. I'm very fortunate it is my job now,
yeah.
for now at least. But yeah, definitely up until a couple years ago, it was pretty intense.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Well, yeah, congratulations on this being it now. Like that is
Appreciate
a
that.
dream come true. Um in the I don't want to pull any information out of you that you don't want to
Mhm.
talk about. I know you said it's long-winded, and that's no issue, but if there's anything you don't want to divulge, that's fine. But I did have a question
Sure.
because you mention it a couple of times across your platforms
Mhm.
and the books, that you did have personal experience with the occult, like you said. Is that something that you can talk about? What that experience was?
Yeah, I can at least give a brief overview because
Okay.
I've had a few. Now I do have a video on my channel where I go really in depth
Hmm.
in all the details, and that was really cathartic to be able to get out to the world. But basically, I grew up. I'm trying to think of how to put this in perspective. In a nutshell, I grew up in two haunted homes. Um, the first home was first of all, I live in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, and it's kind of in the middle of like, I mean, it's kind of outside of a larger city. It's like a suburb of a larger city. Is the one of the towns I grew up in, and my parents were really dysfunctional during that time. There was a lot of like filth in the house. My mom was an animal and a material hoarder. I don't know if you're familiar with that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that that's contributed to kind of a breeding ground for these kinds of things. I actually have my dad interviewed in that video, and I offered to interview my mom and my siblings as far as like when I was just telling the overarching story, but he was the only one that wanted to be involved. And he thought that because he had a few experiences in the home as well, that there was something there that was agitating things. And basically, over the almost 2 years that we lived there, we went from a relatively normal family to complete dissolution. My parents got divorced. I had to move homes. But as far as the paranormal goes, the activity started off kind of minute. Like things would be moved.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon me. Things would be moved around the house. The very first or second night that we ever stayed there, when I stayed in my first room, and I apologize ahead of time, this is probably going to be a little scatterbrained because it's off the cuff.
You're fine.
But
Yeah. Keep going.
but so I saw the apparition of a little boy that really wasn't much younger than I was at the time, because when I lived there, I believe I was like 7 or 8. So I saw that. I obviously was freaked out. I didn't know what to make of it. Ran to my parents, ended up sleeping in the living room for the next like 2 weeks until they eventually forced me to go back. And from there, like I said, it started off small. Things would be moved. Things started to get broken. Like we had a snow globe in my sister's room that for no reason at all just exploded one day. We thought that was weird, but we didn't really link anything together
Right.
until much, much later.
Mm-hmm.
Basically in the basement was where my mom kept a lot of like big wardrobe boxes just full of junk that she had accumulated. And I remember I tried to kind of take solace when my parents would fight. I kind of made my own little space down there where I would just kind of hang out and just get away from it all. And during one of their fights, I remember going down there and a large wardrobe box, like think like was ones you could put like dresses in, right? Mm-hmm. Got thrown from one section of the basement all the way over to where I would be, essentially where my area was. And after that, I couldn't go down there by myself, like I was just way too scared.
Right.
And there were a few other things that happened. Like I said, it's a little scatterbrained off the cuff, but things just kept getting worse and worse. And we had many animals. I mentioned my mom also hoarded animals. And we had, I believe it was in total over the 2 years, like 8 animal deaths. That and it's not that my parents didn't take care of the animals. It wasn't neglect or anything like that. It's just they just like would be perfectly healthy and then they would just pass away like out of nowhere, which would obviously I've always found terrifying just in and of itself, being a lover of animals, having a dog and a turtle myself now. So there was just something evil in that house. When my parents got divorced, and obviously if you want all the super gritty fine details, like I said, I have like an hour and a half long video where I go into all of it on my channel. But after my parents got divorced, when my dad was just living there and before the whole custody stuff had been all sorted and what have you, us 3 kids, me, my sister and brother, I'm the oldest of 3, by the way, just to get that out there. We all were living with my dad, and it got to the point to where we were all having to sleep together in the living room because especially at night, like essentially sundown, a lot of like stuff would happen during the day, just like small creepy things like seeing stuff out of the corner of your eye or things being moved or what have you, just bad feelings. But at night, things would, it would become really violent. We would either get pushed or hit or things would get thrown, especially originating from that basement. I remember we would be huddled together in the living room, and more often than not, and I thought I was the only one that experienced this for a long time, was I would wake up around 2 or 3 in the morning, and I obviously wouldn't be able to sleep because I would hear everything going on in the basement or the surrounding rooms or what have you. And I remember just being paralyzed with fear, and I would just have to hold out until daybreak, where it would usually cease pretty fast after the sun would come up, which I've always found is really bizarre as well.
Mhm.
But turns out later, when I was putting the video together and just kind of diving back into my past, that speaking with my brother and sister, as well as my father and my mother, all separately, that especially my dad and my brother and sister at different times experienced pretty much the same thing,
Mhm.
and we just never talked about it, like as a group until recent. Pardon me, until recently.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. That's the witching hour, right? Is that?
Yeah, which I found later on, obviously having delved into so many cases, that it does seem to be kind of a trope, but I feel
Mhm.
like it's a trope for a reason.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like if something is something borders on, I mean, even if it was like an evil person in life, right? Let alone something demonic, they're gonna want to mock whatever, the antithesis of them is.
Mhm.
So three a.m. obviously being the supposed inversion of when Christ passed away, mocking the Trinity and that sort of a thing. If you subscribe to that belief system,
Mhm.
yeah, it's creepy. I've
Mhm.
experienced some 3 a.m. moments in a couple other cases I've been a part of, but yeah, just obviously back then as a child, I had no idea
Yeah. Yeah.
how, as far as the that whole concept is concerned.
Dude, that's that is the pattern, like the way that you described it. The smallest of things start to happen, and the scatterbrain thing that you're talking about, it's because I'm assuming, because I have similar experience, that
Mhm.
so many of these little things start at the beginning, and the logical person is not going to automatically jump to, that's a demon in my house, that's an evil ghost in my house. It's like, oh,
Right.
okay, the snow globe, it maybe something hit it, or this thing just fell one time, and there's so much that
Right.
happens.
Or like some kind of pressure change or
Yeah,
something.
something, yeah, and
Yeah,
it's
like my mind
only.
tends to go to a more logical place.
Yeah, yeah.
I just think I tend to be scatterbrained when I'm talking about it, because I think due to the dysfunction as well as the
Mhm,
trauma, I've blocked a lot of it out. So diving back in and trying to essentially put it in some type of cohesive order takes a little bit of time for me, if
yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
It's
So
it's it
I was just like trying to spurt it all out at once,
no,
and I was like, I need to like slow down and take my time with it.
I really, really, appreciate you doing that. That was so
Yeah,
much more, like, I mean, just it's heartbreaking to hear that, like, no little child should be that terrified and that harassed.
I agree. I agree.
Did it ever come to some kind of resolution at that time, or did you guys just leave?
So, my parents ended up getting divorced, and my mother got custody of us, and we ended up moving to another much smaller town, which is about 45 minutes away from where we had lived at this time. Pretty much where I'd grown up until that point. So I was the new kid in town. I didn't know anybody. And on top of that, we moved in with my aunt, who was recently married. And they lived in like a generational home that was my uncle's family's.
Mhm.
So it was like 120 something year old semi renovated farmhouse. But they used to like raise livestock there and that sort of a thing. And they had had other experiences prior to us moving there. But we experienced some really weird and some more aggressive manifestations there as time went on.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, like again, I go into it a lot more in the video itself, but my grandmother, who my mom's mom, she had lived with us for a time after my grandfather had passed away, and she ended up actually passing away in the house, and I was with her for that. That's a whole other story to unpack, but the activity in the house really seemed to escalate after she passed away. Because prior to that, it was a lot of really small things, like trying to think of just one thing in particular. Like I had where the bathroom was pretty much you would walk in the front door, and to the right there was a staircase that went upstairs, and to the far left it was like a little wooden hallway essentially. And to the far left was my aunt and uncle's room. There was like a little office room. And then on the far right, there was the bathroom. And it was the only working bathroom we had in the house. So I had gone up just nonchalant, going to use the restroom, not thinking anything of it. And I had seen a glowing blue figure of a man with like a white shirt and some kind of like jean overalls, just like run like almost inhumanly fast from the bedroom itself into the bathroom. And I remember this is kind of embarrassing to say now, but like I had to go use later on, I did make a few friends. Unfortunately, they lived nearby, but like I had to go use the restroom at my friend's house or my neighbor's house for like 2 or 3 weeks because I was too scared to go and,
Wow.
use my own restroom.
Mm-hmm.
What makes it even creepier is when I had told my mom about it, she kind of dismissed it at first. And my aunt has always been, like her sister has always been a little more tuned into those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually showed me it ended up being a family photograph of it was during a family reunion of my uncle's side of the family. And I kid you not, it was like, I'd love to see if I could get the photo. I don't really talk to my uncle. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of in a strange type of situation, but if I could ever get the photo, I would love to show you guys. But there in the middle towards like the back row of people was the same guy that I saw. And when I pointed it out and I was like, I'm pretty sure that this is the man that I saw. And my aunt freaked out because I think it was 4 or 5 years before she had technically lived there. And before, obviously, we lived there as a family. It was my uncle's father, and he had died of brain cancer in the same bedroom where he had ran from towards the bathroom. So yeah, that was creepy to say the least.
Kody.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I think it's pretty clear why. Not that you just ended up hosting the show that you are, and writing the books that you did, but why there was just something I couldn't describe about the way that you tell the stories. Like you're a great storyteller, but there was also something very intimate and very personal about listening to those stories coming from you. So I think, that obviously that past would obviously have an effect like
Yeah.
that. Oh my gosh.
But I appreciate it. Obviously, I just try to tell the stories the best
Mhm.
way that I know how, and to, I guess, get the overall feeling across. But yeah, it's and like I said, stuff after my grandma passed away just got way, way crazier than that.
Oh.
Because prior to that, that was like the peak of it, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't live there anymore. I may as well give the town's name because it's still really, really small. But the town is called Sedgwick, Kansas. And I think when we lived there, it had about a population of like 1,500 people. I think maybe it's got like 2,000 now. It hasn't grown like a ton. But I think because having now where I am today, having visited a lot of different places, such as like Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where the Mothman, a lot of Mothman activity took place, having been to where the Silver Bridge collapsed and that sort of a thing. I really do think there are places in our world that perhaps the veil is a little bit thinner between this world and whatever comes next, whether
Right.
it's another dimension or what have you. And I think Cedric might be one of those places because it seems to have almost like a dreamlike state to just the experience of being there.
Mhm.
And it seems to attract some pretty strange stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, if you wanted to, I was going to get into one other story just about what happened following my grandma passing away.
Absolutely. Please.
It can get lonely climbing Mount McKinley, so to entertain myself, I go to ChumbaCasino.com. At Chumba Casino, I can play hundreds of online casino-style games for free, like online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Plus, I get a daily login bonus. It's just too bad that up here, I don't have anyone to share my excitement with. Woohoo!
Live the Chumba life. Anytime, anywhere. Play for free now at ChumbaCasino.com. VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Yeah. So, and this also probably is about as crazy as it got, but following her passing away, uh, and I go into this in the video as well, but so being in a small town, I mean, I don't know if you did this as a kid or not, but we used to do what was called ding dong door ditching, where you would run up and ring doorbells and run
I
away.
was a good little girl, so I didn't, but I knew of it. I knew.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. I was a pretty good kid too, but we had fun.
Mhm.
But our doorbell started to go off usually like late evening, which makes perfect sense, and we just thought that it was some kids messing with us or something. But it got kind of excessive because it kept happening like night after night for weeks. And what's crazy is when the doorbell would ring, we would, someone would rush and open the door and we wouldn't be able to see anybody. And our yard was pretty open. Like it didn't have a lot of like hiding spots and stuff like that. Obviously having done it myself, I'm just trying to logically think, if it was some kids, where would they have gone?
Yeah.
Well, we never found anybody. And my uncle worked really early in the morning. So he would usually be in bed when the doorbell would start, sporadically going off. So he got pissed off one night and he just disconnected it entirely, like took away the power source, took it off. He was like, I'm done with that. You know what I mean? Like if they're going to knock on the door, whatever, they're going to knock on the door, but it is what it is. So we did that and it was good for like 3 or 4 days, from what I can recall. And then the doorbell started going off again. And all that was left there was like 2 wires. It's like you would have to literally try and like, you know what I mean? Like rub the wires together to get any sort of a notification of a doorbell thing to go off. So that was bizarre. And that kept happening. And we obviously had no explanation for it. My mom was just like, oh, like we'll just ignore it. Like it doesn't exist. Because that was just her way of coping with stuff, I think. And there was one night, because I mean, a lot of times, me being the oldest of us 3 kids, my mom would have to run errands usually, in the evening or whatever, like run to the grocery store, pick up, I don't know, prescriptions, stuff like that. And I remember this one time she was out, my aunt who was going to school to be like something to do with her teaching degree at that time. So she was at night school and my uncle was working at 12. So he had decided to stay late and he used to give certifications for pilots. So like he was very much Wichita in the general area is very much known for like aircraft production here in Kansas. And anyways, that's what he was doing. So it was us kids there alone. And usually me being the oldest, it would be my job to make sure that like my brother and sister had food, that like we took showers and brushed our teeth and that sort of a thing. Well, our bathtub, which we used to just take baths upstairs in the same bathroom that I was talking about, and the bathtub broke. And so the only other option we had was this old shower that was down in the basement. And the basement was already pretty creepy because similar to my mom, and obviously with my mom being there, my aunt also hoarded stuff. So that like the whole basement is pretty much full of just junk, kind of similar to how our first house was, but with it being 120 plus year old house to begin with, it was already extra creepy.
Yeah.
So we would join one another down there and one of us would stand outside of the door when the other took the shower. And it was just like an old spigot style shower head, just in like this concrete enclosure essentially where you could look up and see just the rafters, you know what I mean, of the basement, which was already creepy enough to begin with. And so we would usually just we had this old like 90s style or early 2000s style boombox, and we would just put on like the radio or whatever was available. And we would just be down there just trying to keep each other company, while we did our business so we could just get in and out and not be too freaked out. Well, there was one night mom was out. My little brother was he was upstairs, he's watching TV or something. And I was standing watch outside of the door while my sister showered. And the power went out, which was strange because there wasn't any sort of a storm or anything like that. So I'm already like, I'm unnerved, but I'm like, you're not thinking necessarily that it's something paranormal or even in that same vein.
Yeah.
Well, my sister's freaking out, obviously. And I'm like, just chill out, just finish like rinsing off, you'll be good. I'm right here. I could help guide her to the stairs or whatever if I needed to. And we started hearing this God, I don't know how to describe it. It was more or less like some kind of a snarling noise coming from inside of, so where the shower was, right? Let me see if I can coordinate it here. There was just a concrete wall, and then on the other side of that over here was the actual like basement living room area. And so we were like in a laundry room basically, where the shower was. And we started hearing this snarling noise that, I mean, it's it was inhuman. It was terrifying. And my sister, obviously I'm freaking out at that point. My sister's
Mhm.
freaking out. She still has soap all over her. She rushes and runs into me at the stairs because it's pitch black down there. We can't see anything. We're still hearing this noise. We don't know what's going on. She's scratching me, trying to get past me to run up the stairs.
Right.
So I'm trying to help her get up the stairs. I'm trying to get up the stairs. My little brother's screaming upstairs. We managed to get upstairs back into the living room, and the lights were flickering. We're still hearing this sound come from the basement. So I just took my sister, who was wrapped in a towel. I took my brother, and we just ran out into our backyard, and we just waited there for my mom to get home. And it ceased at some point. I wasn't really keeping track as far as,
Mhm.
we could see lights flickering and that sort of a thing.
Oh
But
my God.
so that was probably the peak of how scary it got there,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty terrifying. And what makes things even freakier is that wall essentially is mostly solid concrete. So there's no way any sort of an animal would have gotten inside of the wall or anything like that.
Mhm.
And I haven't heard anything even similar, since then, uh, that I could even compare it to as far as what it sounded like. But it is bizarre that these things picked up after my grandma died in the house. But my grandma loved us all, and she was a very like spiritual lady. Loved us kids, no malice whatsoever.
Sure.
And it's strange because I don't think it was her in
Mhm.
any sense, but maybe something like perhaps with how traumatic the passing was, with me being there with her, because
Mhm.
it was me, my mom, and my aunt that were actually with her when she passed. I actually wasn't even supposed to be home that day. I was homesick. It was January 25th of 2005, and I remember that because a movie came out on DVD. I was homesick. We went to pick up my prescription. I was like, "Ooh, mom, can you buy me this movie?" So I had been watching that movie when things started to happen.
Mhm.
And yeah, there's a lot more details and stuff to unpack with that. But I think perhaps as a result of that, maybe it attracted something that maybe wasn't there to begin with.
Yeah.
It's hard,
Well,
but it's hard telling.
it's not out of the question too to think, just because of other similar kind of occurrences that I'm aware of, that
Hmm.
if there was an energy already there, that it could potentially feed off of that mourning. It's when you're so vulnerable, like
Right,
emotionally speaking, and just wiggle its way right into that and right into people's lives at that lowest of moments or traumatic moments.
right.
Yeah, because that I wouldn't think, like, if your grandmother was a very loving and, kind person, she loved you so much, like,
Hmm.
it's pretty clear, like, the behavior does not match the person,
Oh,
so
right. Yeah, no, I
so
didn't for a second think that
yeah,
it had
yeah.
anything to actually do with her as a
Mhm,
person. It's just,
mhm.
it is bizarre that things got so crazy, especially
Yeah.
following her passing.
Yeah. Well, all right. So a couple of thoughts before I lose them. Number one, would
Sure.
you mind? Can we reconnect after we are done here, and I can get that episode link from you, the one where you
Yeah,
go into full detail? I would really really like to listen to that one.
for
Two,
sure.
this is creeping me out, but in your stories, you have described so many things that we have in common. like
Mhm.
like down to the basement shower and the head and the rafters and the weird cement wall, and like it's freaking me out because like I can
I actually didn't know that. That's wild.
that is ugh. And I also grew up in two haunted homes.
Well
Uh,
then,
but yeah, so this was
can
meant to be.
can
You were
relate,
meant to
dude.
say it, dude.
Can relate.
Now, the other thing was, so when you're going through these stories on
Mhm.
Mystery Archives, you must be seeing the pattern, the similarities to your own experiences. Has going through the show, has that helped you at all to look back on your own experiences and to try to conceptualize what was happening? Or do you just see the similarities and think, well, yeah, it's something?
No, that's a great question. I think as a result of diving into a lot of different cases, obviously I've always been aware of the stuff that I went through, me and my family went through, but I didn't think of trying to put it in any sort of a chronological order to actually get it out to the world and try and tell people. Because those that are really close to me, they've known about it for years.
Mhm.
It's just not something I ever thought that I would share with the world.
Mhm.
Um, I originally told the stories or rough versions of them. I further added more details as I remembered when I really decided to get it more or less out there professionally.
Mhm.
Um, where I had this was like when I had first started, so like I don't know, 2021 or so, where I had just kind of put some of the details out there on the channel. And long story short, I actually had a network reach out to me, and they were doing a new show. I'm not going to name the show or anything, 'cause
Mhm.
it ended up not working out, which that's a funny story too. But they were interested in telling my story and recreating it and that sort of a thing. And I was like, well, I'm not necessarily getting it out there for the sake of making money.
Sure.
I'm trying to get it out there for the sake of it being cathartic. And if there's anyone who went through similar stuff, maybe they can relate and maybe feel like if they share their story, whether it's with me or whoever, that it'll
Mhm.
kind of help them heal from whatever they went through in the past. And that is more or less why I decided to put it out kind of as like a tell all type of thing.
Okay.
In my second book as well, I essentially rehash all of the details and added as many as I possibly could, because I do include my own stories in the second book as well.
Oh, wow. Wow. And
Yeah.
you've got a third volume coming out early next year, right?
Yeah, so it should be out, I believe, in March. I gave myself a little bit more breathing room just because this year has been absolutely insane.
I
I
bet.
mean,
Yeah.
I've written 2 books. I've had to produce this show. I've done a lot of like investigations and stuff that people
Mhm.
don't even know about yet. I've had 2 I filmed 1, and I'm working on 2 other documentary projects as well. So it's just been a lot. It's been a
Okay.
lot.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, maybe that's, would you be able to share that with me for Patreon, like one of your investigations,
Yeah.
any details? Would that be cool? Because I
Yeah,
was
sure.
gonna ask you about that, but, I think let's since we're talking about the books, maybe we can
Sure.
kinda gear in that, and then I've got a few more questions for you before we close out.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so like I told you, before, I was able to pick up the first volume. It was I told you this, and I don't know how else to say it, but it scared the crap out of me. It scared me. And I don't
There's some
often.
scary cases,
There
man.
are. And it was so cool because, like, I got to learn brand new details about cases that are known to me. In that first volume, you include 10 cases.
Yep.
I also got to learn about just cases new to me entirely, just all of this stuff. And I hope this is taken as the compliment that it is, but as I was going through it and feeling those feelings and being scared and just I don't know, enwrapped in the information, like, you are like the adult version of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Do you remember
You
that
know,
series?
I do actually. I think I read the books as a kid, or book. I can't remember if it was the
I
series
think
of stories
it was like
or
3 or 4 books total, but yeah,
I
yeah, those
definitely
are
read at least one of them. But yeah, I've gotten that before. So no, compliment taken. I appreciate that.
good, good. That's how it's meant, man. But I was gonna ask, like, how are there plans to continue the series after this third one? Like, are those in the works?
I would certainly be interested. I haven't necessarily had that talk with my publisher yet, but
Mhm.
because as far as I know, we were set up for 2. I signed on for the third, and I would love to do more for sure. I
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that it makes for a pretty interesting read.
I
So
agree. I
as long
agree.
as they're on the same page, no pun intended. Yeah, I would love to.
Um, well, so what's the feedback been like so far? I know number 2 was just released, but how are people receiving that first one?
The first one, I mean, as far as I could tell, it's done exceptionally well. Obviously, I don't have like sales numbers and that
Oh,
sort of
no worries.
stuff yet,
I was just
but
curious. Yeah.
just from people who have ordered it and reviewed it and shared feedback with me, whether it was through the channel or through
Mhm.
DMing or whatever on Instagram or Facebook, they've been really happy with it.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
think that the stories are terrifying and worth the time, and I'm just really glad that people are enjoying um my research and my work. It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, I will be linking direct links to buy, so I hope that anyone listening to this episode today, do please check this out. Like it's good. It's just good. It's a good story and book, and then go check out the show as well. Of course, if you have not yet heard of it, which I'd be surprised if you haven't. Um,
I really appreciate that again. No pressure, but I will take any traffic I can get, and just know I appreciate everyone who takes the time.
oh gosh, yes, absolutely. I hope they do. Um, so another thing. Let's see. Oh, so I just wanted to mention real quick before we move
Mhm.
on.
Sure.
One of the stories in there, like I will say my personal favorite was Bobby Mackey's.
Bobby
I
Mackey's.
guess I didn't know that story. I guess
Really?
I just never heard the full story about everything that happened. And that
It's definitely an interesting one.
Bobby was still skeptical by the end of it all. I'm like,
Yeah, you're like, "Bro, how?" See, that to me is like, I don't know, this is not to disparage Bobby Mackey or anything like that, but it's kinda, I don't know, denial is really powerful, and I think maybe he just might be a little bit in denial, just my
yeah,
guess.
and yeah, I mean, I guess maybe the stakes were high at the time. Like he had a young family or
Oh, yeah.
a kid about to be born and a wife and
Mhm.
all of that. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
there's definitely a
rightfully
lot
so.
riding on his shoulders for sure,
Mhm.
so I can kinda understand, and I would argue these days it's a little more socially acceptable, um, to talk about, the paranormal, and I
Mhm.
mean, we could even get into, like, paranormal tourism and that sort of a thing, how that's
Yep.
evolved,
Yeah.
but, I don't think it was quite the same way back then.
No, no, far less acceptable for sure.
Mhm.
Is that a location that you've been to?
No, no, unfortunately not. I would have loved to. I've, been over by Wilder, Kentucky several times, but the original location now, as far as I know, has been closed down due to structural issues. So
Oh.
they've relocated the actual Bobby Mackey's to a different location. I'm not sure if it's reopened or not yet, but the original where everything took place with Carl Lawson and that whole situation, I believe
Mhm.
is closed now, because I mean the building was essentially falling apart.
Oh, that's so sad though. So
Yeah.
are they gonna tear it down or fix it?
Yeah, no, as far as I know, they're probably gonna demolish it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, I wish they could preserve it, make it like a national or a historical monument, something like that, yeah.
A lot of states are like that, even if things go into, disrepair, if they are historical buildings, they won't allow people to tear them down, which is cool in some respects,
Yeah,
especially if it had to do with something like this, but I think it was more or less like a public hazard, and if
sure.
they had investigators and stuff too because of the structural integrity and that sort of a thing, there was fear that they could get hurt, what have you, so,
Yeah, totally get it. Ah,
yeah.
I would have loved to have made it there.
It's
I do
still
think
lame. I would have
yeah,
signed a waiver. I would have
yeah,
signed a waiver for sure.
totally. Yeah, no liability on you if I fall through the floor, like, that's on me.
Exactly, exactly.
All right. So we're going to right up to the end here. This has gone by so quickly. Dang. There
Oh,
were
yeah, that's crazy. It's already been pretty much an
I
hour.
know. But there were just a couple of things I definitely wanted to touch on with you before we reach the end because well, one is about the demonic
Okay,
and the concept about it. Because the demonic does play a pretty big part on your show and in the book. Um
definitely.
comes up quite a bit. How you yourself, you just lay out the facts, and you let the listener or the reader just decide for themselves.
Right.
But what are your actual like personal opinions, beliefs about the demonic?
Ooh, I would say that that's probably changed quite a bit over the years. Because I'm not I was raised Catholic, up until my grandma passed away. That's actually when we pretty much stopped going to church, but we were never super involved, if that makes sense, just far less having the beliefs, having read the Bible and that sort of a thing. I I don't know if I necessarily fully believe or think they fully have the story correct as far as, the whole Lucifer's fall and, the rebellious angels and that sort of a thing. I tend to lean more towards negative entities, whether it's in another dimension or what have you, that for some reason or another are influencing and perhaps feeding off of people, their fears and that sort of a thing. There's a lot of different theories, but like I do consider myself a theist. Like, like I do think there is a God. I just don't necessarily think anyone or everyone has it figured out. I certainly don't. Um, but having encountered some pretty scary stuff in person, both in my youth and as an adult now, uh, I do think that there are human spirits. And, if you were, for lack of a better word, a dickhead in life, then you're going to probably be a dickhead in death.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm sure if someone who was a super negative person when they were alive, when they die, they would try to inflict as much misery on those that they could,
Yeah.
drag with them essentially. So I think that definitely plays a role. But as far as the real, what would we consider truly demonic cases, I think those are very, very exceptionally rare to encounter. But I do think they exist. I just don't think every single instance of a violent haunting or that sort of a thing is necessarily demonic.
Okay.
But people also are incredibly fascinated with it as a concept. So not only from a research standpoint, but from an entertainer standpoint, I want to give people what they want to consume, what they're most interested in.
Right.
And I love learning about it as well. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
yes, I
Yeah.
do believe in it, but I think it's super rare. Just
Okay.
my
Okay.
personal take.
Yeah, I think we align for the most part on that belief. Like, I absolutely agree with you. If you were an asshole in life, you're gonna be an
Yeah,
asshole in death. Nothing just
probably.
magically changes about your personality just by dying.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I actually covered demons and talked about Satan and the whole story on this show. Like, I go subject by subject, season by season. So I had a whole season dedicated to demons and possession and all of that. And I kind of landed somewhere in there that the demonic, or what most people consider to be the demonic, I think it's a misperception on our part. It's a misunderstanding of what it is we're actually dealing
Dealing
with.
with.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. I think it's another entity entirely, or like a just an asshole ghost, just to the nth degree. But
Right.
yeah, it's fascinating to me, and I do think like from an entertainment perspective, that lends itself to an educational perspective. Like,
Mhm.
if you have to call something demonic to get somebody's attention, to just pay attention to the case, to the story, and
Mhm.
learn about that and what that process looks like,
Right.
like, yeah, yeah, absolutely do it. Like, if that gets somebody involved, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost necessary in a
Hmm.
lot of ways, especially when you're diving into like really intricate cases to try and grab people's attention. And for
Sure.
one reason or another, that's a good way to do it. But I would say, the videos will speak for themselves as far as the details and the cases go. But I do ultimately try to leave it up to people to
Yeah.
decide for themselves. I can give my 2 cents or what have you, but at the end of the day, it's going to be up to you to decide what you want to believe.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, no, demons and the concept of hell and all of that is just incredibly fascinating to me. Anyways, take away let alone what I get to do for a living and learn about these cases and entities and those sort of a things. So
Mhm.
I'll definitely be diving into those episodes for sure that you have.
Eh,
So
boy.
I love listening to a good podcast, man, and just getting my chores done or errands done or whatever. So
Oh,
yeah,
well, that
I'll
was
have to share you around with my audience as
that
well.
was
But
early on in the show. I cannot promise it is listen worthy, but you know what? Dang it,
hey,
I
man,
did it. I got through it. But it is such a fascinating story, the whole concept about demonic, about Lucifer, that and then to be able to look at the actual history and the
yeah.
evolution of those terms, where did those actually come from?
Mhm.
To see that was really, really eye-opening.
It's funny. I actually recently, in the last couple months, started basically what I would consider like a mini series that I call the Demonology Archives, where I've started to
Ooh,
dive into those,
okay.
like different entities and where they actually originate from, where the references come from, and that sort of a thing. I've done. I did the Zozo demon,
Yeah,
which
yeah, I listened to that one.
and the loose correlations with Pazuzu from Mesopotamian belief and that sort of a thing. I think I've done Leviathan. Yeah, I've done Leviathan, and I just did Lilith a little while ago. I'm kind of spacing them out because obviously there's only going to be so many that people
Mhm.
will really care to learn about, that I want to learn about as well. But they're just not as popular as like my normal uploads. But I enjoy doing them because I enjoy learning about that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Same, same. I think it's yeah, the Zozo episode was very, very good. You actually got to talk to Darren Evans, right?
So I didn't actually speak to Darren Evans himself. I did speak to a friend of his who went by the pseudonym Butch,
Oh,
and
okay.
we talked because I had like an actual full episode on the Zozo demon that kind of got me to where I am today as far as growth is concerned. It's one of those videos that just went kind of viral. It was just relevant for the time apparently, but he actually reached out after the fact, and I just kind of touched base with him after he kind of proved who he was, and got some details on it. And yeah, apparently, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth here, but apparently, Darren and his relatives, they won't even say anything resembling the name because it terrifies them so much to this day. But they're in a much better place now as far as like they're safe. Everyone seems to be doing good and what have you. So
Okay. Okay.
at least there's that.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I know it was a pretty traumatic experience, just from what I heard on your episode. Um,
Definitely.
I'll tell you more about it after we're done here. But Darren Evans is not necessarily a fan of mine because I
Really?
I made a video once
Okay.
questioning Zozo because I was going through the history, and I was all I did
Right.
was just question it, and yeah, he had some choice words for me, but
That's
that was
okay.
years ago, so hopefully he's forgotten all about me.
I can't name names on the air, but I had a really large YouTuber and someone who has a show on the Discovery Channel, and it's not who you're thinking it is. It's not Zach Bagans, it's someone else who tried to sue me. I shit you not, who tried to sue me back in July.
What?
I got the takedown notices for the video that I had on the subject on the 4th of July. So I'm like, what the fuck is this about? And long story short, they tried to sue me over 3 images of this home that they had supposedly took that I forgot to cite because it was an older video. I didn't even necessarily know what I was doing at the time. But yeah, they were trying to sue me and destroy my channel over that. So there's a lot of shitty people in
Sure.
in any industry, let alone entertainment, let alone by larger extension the paranormal
Yeah.
community or what have you. So it's a sad thing. I've been very fortunate. I have one other story I'll probably tell you off air of someone else that I've dealt with that had some choice words for me, but it regards another case that I've covered. But I always try to anything that's publicly available, I
Mhm.
try to include. I try to dig through everything with a fine tooth comb. And I'm human. I make mistakes sometimes, or I misquote sometimes, or what have you. But I do my absolute best to not to not.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, some people are just something else, man.
They get very, very territorial over what they consider their content and their information and, their world. Like, I get it, but like I'm like you too. I try to cite everything, just go above and beyond to cite everything, give credit where credit is due.
Right.
Um, but that makes sense for your show, like how it exploded. Like now more eyeballs are
Hmm.
going to be on it and people see the value in that. So yeah, they're going to be like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, you used my picture without asking me.
Well,
I'm going to, yeah.
well, so this person, and again, I don't know exactly how all true this is because I ended up settling, so I didn't have to go through the legal rigmarole and that sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Was and it really showed me how just broken and how easily someone can abuse the copyright system because they would have been transformative works, fair use, anyways. But whatever, let bygones be bygones.
Sure.
but
Yeah.
but this person apparently bought the house, and I wasn't aware of that, so of course I didn't put that in the video itself. And they were, what it really came down to is they were upset that my video was the top ranking video on their, what they considered their like life's work. and
Oh.
and they had made a whole series which obviously was of a lesser quality, and I made one video and I dwarfed them as far as viewership is concerned, which obviously I didn't do maliciously.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they decided to go out of their way and be a dick about it, but it is what it is. I wouldn't do it. I've only taken down one video for copyright, and it
Mhm.
was someone who just blatantly uploaded it and said that they made it. And that's the only time I've ever taken anybody down. I've probably had 50 plus re-uploads, but as long as they cite me as the original author, I don't care.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Boy, yeah, that's pretty blatant. The courage, the
Yeah.
gall.
Yeah, yeah,
Kind of
yeah.
crazy. I
As long as they say like this was originally done by Mystery Archives,
at
then cool,
least
bro,
do
whatever.
that.
And,
Yeah.
like I could have 100% copyright match, but if you're gonna say that you made it from scratch, nah, brother, that's not
Oh.
gonna fly.
No, that's some pretty dirty work there.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, but the like the good part about that is those kinds of folks, they, or I guess it's not good, but it is what it is. Those kinds of folks don't ordinarily, get the accolades and the credit at the end of it. Like if you can't make your own stuff, like
Yeah,
you can only take
right.
from others. Like at the end, you don't really get
People
there.
will
It's
do people will scheme and do anything they can
it's for the
sometimes to try
shortcut.
and,
Yeah.
yeah, for the
Yeah.
shortcut,
Mhm.
but I hate to break it to them, there is no shortcut. This stuff takes, I mean, as far as like just from like a growth standpoint, this stuff takes years, man.
Well, yeah, you started this show in you said 2017 or 2016?
Yeah, so I had the original concept and I actually founded the channel with the name and everything in 2017, and then I had thought about it and kind of conceptualized between then and 2020, and then I got laid off and I was like, well, I need something to focus on,
Mhm.
because everything else that was going on in the world at that time as well. But yeah, I just ended up just diving in and just starting it then.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so, I mean, it takes time. Sometimes we sit on things. Sometimes, we have to try different things. It's a whole experimental lab over here. I can just speak from personal experience, just always
Oh, absolutely. And it's
trying
ever
different things.
changing. That's the crappy
Mhm.
part too.
Yeah.
It's ever changing.
Yeah. Well, just one more thing. Oh my gosh, we're almost to time. One
It's all
more
good.
thing about the show and about the book.
Mhm.
The Warrens. When you are speaking of the demonic, the
Mhm.
Warrens do make an appearance. They were a huge part of that. What what are your thoughts on the Warrens? What's your opinion about their credibility, their influence, or their motives?
So I actually get this quite a bit, and I have some interesting stuff that I'm going to share as well regarding just regarding something I'm doing that involves a member of the Warrens family, but not that I'm like super close or anything like that. But uh, I think that the Warrens, any way that you slice it, were pioneers in a sense. I don't think a lot of people would be able to make any sort of a living off of the paranormal if it wasn't for the Warrens. I do think a lot of the cases they dealt with, especially early on, perhaps were maybe the real deal. I do think that for publicity and probably money, they were later on exaggerated. Not necessarily those specific cases, but the earlier ones, but maybe some ones that they dealt with later on,
Right.
maybe got exaggerated, and whether that was their fault or the media's or what have you, it's hard telling. But actually, it's funny because I'm gonna speak with now that we don't have like an exact date, but the tentative date essentially is the second week of December. But I'm going to be speaking with Chris McKinnell, doing an interview with him, and he's actually the grandson of the Warrens. And I've got a lot of questions for him that I'm sure most people would like to hear, because it's not every day you get the opportunity to be able to speak to someone like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I joined a Warrens group just to further learn about him at some point, and I saw someone posting like intimate, like family photos, including them. And I was like, I feel like you can't just go source those from somewhere, And turns out one thing led to another. I ended up messaging him, and yeah, he's their grandson. He's got, I mean, I can't wait to pick his brain about it.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, what a cool opportunity.
yeah. What's your take? Because I know everyone's got an opinion, and hey, no shame if you feel differently.
I do agree with you on like they're pioneers. They are
Mm-hmm.
pioneers. That is not up for debate.
Mm-hmm.
Their influence, like I go back and forth on whether or not their influence was a good thing or a bad thing, because that was directly preceding like the big satanic panic, and then I do think
Mm-hmm.
there was capitalization during that time.
Oh, absolutely.
I think they did ultimately do more good than harm.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're tippy toeing and dealing through with things like the demonic, like just my experience with the concept of possession, child possession, things that people do with animals, like when they go to the extremes in
Mm-hmm.
regards to the demonic, I just cannot get behind that. And I just know that an influence like Lorraine's and Ed's, as well placed as it may have been, that
Mm-hmm.
does affect those extremists that are going to go to that extreme. And that's just an area I say, nope, I'm not, that cannot exist, that cannot continue. I do not agree with that. And that's just, it has no place in this world. So it's only like through association of their influence that it can turn
Right.
very bad. Otherwise, yeah, I do think they did more good than harm ultimately. But
That's
definitely,
fair.
definitely influential, definitely pioneers, and paved the way for everyone that came after.
Right.
I will.
And the way that I look at it too is like, sorry, I
Oh,
didn't mean
no,
to
no,
cut
no,
you
you're good.
off
You're
there.
good.
I do respect them in many ways.
Hmm.
And obviously I didn't know them. I wasn't there to, say that I have personal firsthand experiences with whatever cases and what
Yeah,
have you.
yeah.
So I think it's fair with figures, as big of figures as they became, that everyone can kind of feel some type of way about it,
Hmm.
or about them.
Sure. Yeah. They did shine a light on an area that may have otherwise remained un undiscovered, studied, and
Right.
like I can
Or at
look
least for the time, they were at least ahead of the curve for
at.
sure. I'm sure somebody
Absolutely.
at some
Yeah.
point would have hopped on the train, but
Zach Bagans would have gone back in a time machine to begin begin that his pioneering ways. He's a great businessman. I will say that.
he's a fantastic businessman. I don't necessarily, I've heard a lot of stuff about Zach over the years. I've never dealt with him. I obviously don't know him, that, just to get that out of the way. But I think, if it wasn't for the other members of what became Ghost Adventures, I don't think Zach would have been shit as far as the paranormal is concerned.
Oh, interesting. Interesting point. Yeah.
Well, he was a DJ before he ended up meeting the other guys, and their very first documentary that they put together, which I believe you can still find on YouTube, is, I don't recall the name off the top of my head, but me and a friend of mine watched it about 4 or 5 months ago, and it's actually really, really interesting. I do think they capture some pretty legitimate stuff. So I think the intention started out legitimate, um, but what it's morphed into now is a bit of a caricature, as far as like the show itself and the evidence is concerned and that sort of a thing. Again, just my opinion. I haven't seen, now I'm very familiar with the Latoya Amons case. I haven't personally seen the Demon House documentary by Zach.
It was good,
Um,
actually. Yeah.
yeah, my fiance's seen it. She said it was really good. I meant to watch it at some point. I just haven't gotten around to it. But yeah, Latoya Amons actually, I don't know if, are you pretty familiar with that case?
Yeah, somewhat.
Ish.
Mhm.
Yeah. I've done a few deep dives on it. Well, I did like a full deep dive episode, and then when they put out the movie The Deliverance, I kind of revisited it just to see, what maybe they got right versus maybe what they didn't, sort of a thing, as far as from what I could tell. But um uh having a very close friend that I'm working on a podcast with, he's spoken with Latoya a few different times, and she genuinely believes what she went through, and she gave no indications, as far as like that she was making it up or anything like that. So it's that's a very interesting case for sure. But I do think it's interesting that he purchased the property to then investigate it, have all this scary shit happen on this documentary, have the demon supposedly affect his eyesight, and then to tear it down because it's quote too dangerous. And then now he has this haunted museum where he leases all the items from other people,
Yeah.
and claims that that they're his own, essentially, to profit off of it. But I read somewhere he makes, like, just off the museum, like 20 grand a day. So
Wow. Well,
he's doing pretty good. And like,
not
look, I
surprising.
love me
Yeah.
some good business, brother. Then he's doing pretty good. But
Yeah.
at what point do you I don't know. I just think you could have your cake and eat it too. I think you could conduct proper investigations and not bullshit things and still do all right. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just, in some ways, a lot of people could say that, maybe he's sold out in some sense. And there's a lot of, you guys can do your own research and again, make your own conclusions about Zach Bagans. But I've heard conflicting things, that he's kind of an asshole and that he's kind of I don't know, a charlatan. But do I know him? I don't.
Yeah, I will say, like, I won't comment on, whether or not, like, most of what he does is fact or faked, but, like,
Right, because
especially
it's all
early on,
speculative.
it is absolutely. But I will say early on, like, I have an acting background. 25 years I was an actor, so I feel like
No
I've
kidding.
got a
That's
good.
sick.
Thank you. I tried. I failed, but I tried.
Hey,
But
man, most people don't even try. So,
but I feel like I've got a pretty good read on folks. And
mhm.
just watching those early episodes with the Ghost Adventures crew and hearing the stories from Zach that he would tell about his experience and just kind of watching him go through it. Like, I don't think he's a good actor. And I
Mhm.
think it's pretty apparent when he is putting on the show. But
Yeah, for sure.
there is a sincerity about him sometimes that I pick up on. So there is some truth to all of the cacophony that is
Yeah. Oh,
Ghost
yeah, yeah.
Adventures
I'm
now. Like
not.
I sense that.
Yeah, like I'm not just trying to 100% just shit on him as a
Oh, no, no,
person
no,
or
no,
his
I
experiences,
would
because I would never try to just invalidate someone's experiences. I just think from where it started versus kind of what it is now and some of the shadier stuff that's happened in the background, that it maybe started out with good intentions, but perhaps ended up maybe a little worse off than it was
absolutely.
supposed to.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, 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 I was just throwing my opinion out there. I had nothing
No, you're good.
I love what
You're
you had to
good.
say about it. I love what you had to say about it. Well, Kody, so let's wrap this up so that we can jump
All
backstage and
right.
have our awesome chat about your investigations.
All
First
right.
off, do you have any upcoming events or appearances or things in the works that you would like to share?
Ooh, I don't. I wish I
That's
did,
okay.
but I don't. I've traveled a ton this year, but unfortunately no expos and stuff or anything like that. As far as I'm aware so far. Maybe there'll be some more stuff next year. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. 2025 is it's just around the corner, man. Brand new year.
It is. It
All
is,
right.
man.
Well, then, in that case, where would you like to send folks to find and follow you online, to find the show, and to pick up copies of the books?
So I'm on pretty much every social media. My main obviously being YouTube. It's just youtube.com/the @ mystery archives. If you want to pick up a book, whether volume 1 or volume 2, you can do so at Amazon. It's available at Barnes and Noble, pretty much a bunch of different online bookstores. But if you would like a signed copy from me, I can pull up the link here. Sorry, it's relatively new. But if you want to visit,
do they go
I'm sorry, go ahead.
beyond the fray? Do they go through Beyond the Fray?
So they can also go through Beyond the Fray, but they can visit. I run my own store as well for like my merchandise.
Okay.
So they can visit mysteryarchives.myshopify.com, and I offer signed copies. I ship them out myself. All the merchandise and stuff I do myself as well.
Right on.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, you heard
It
it,
helps.
folks. Yeah. Oh, well, I'll have to get a signed copy from you for volume 2, because I am going to snag that for myself.
For sure,
All right.
dude.
Well, let's close it out. Help me round it all out here. Would you like to leave my audience with any final thoughts, words of wisdom, or a piece of advice?
Ooh, again, fantastic question. I guess like maybe some parting words would be just I appreciate you guys if you took the time not only to listen to this episode, but if you do happen to buy and read my book, or if you visit my channel and check out some of my content, just know that a lot of work has gone into it, and I do my absolute best to get the stories out there. And yeah, the best advice I could give is just follow your dreams and your passions, and you never know, you might get lucky and put in enough work where you might be able to do it one day for a living.
Tale weaver, nightmare creator, host of Mystery Archives, Kody Richardson. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. What an intense series of titles. I appreciate that. Again, thank you so much.
Find Mystery Archives over on YouTube and follow the links in the notes to pick up your copy of Stories from the Archives. Listen, read, thank me later. Kody was kind enough to join me backstage for a quick chat for my patrons. If you would like to catch this backstage banter and other private guest chats and patron exclusives, head over to patreon.com/Paranorm Girl Pod. This is a wonderful way to support the program and my ongoing efforts to cover topics more extensively and bring on even more incredible guests, just like Kody Richardson. 3 other very easy ways that you can show support are by following PGP on social media and YouTube at Paranorm Girl Pod, sharing the show with others every chance you get, and by submitting your personal eerie tales and encounters with the paranormal to be featured at the top of an upcoming episode, or the next edition of Spectral Shorts. Call the show's spooky story recording line at 208-717-1655. Leave your identifier, the location where the encounter took place, and then tell your story. I also invite you, of course, if it is your preference, to email your story to the show, and I will tell it for you. Message me at paranormgirlpod@gmail.com. This has been your mid-season finale. Thank you all so much for tuning in. The show will be going dark for a couple of weeks so that I can enjoy the holidays with family and get ready for the second half of the season. But I will be back middle of January. That is a wrap for now. Happy Christmas Eve, everyone. I will see you all in the new year. Stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.
How to have fun, anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2, collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3, play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4, unleash your excitement.
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com. VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.